it bothers me because in some ways I feel like the MAGA movement are a little bit better. They don't want the USA to get in foreign wars and such, but it seems like, especially from Ron DeSantis and the more moderate neoconservative wing of the MAGA movement, hysterical fear of China. And hysterical fear of China and of communism seems to be a central plank of what they believe, and it's very dangerous. And it could be used to commit, real acts of repression and such. On the left, the Democrats, they seem to focus on hysterically opposing Russia and supporting regime change in the name of social justice. And on the right, you have reluctance around these wars. You have talk of economic nationalism. But, Ron DeSantis and others have thrown into that this hysterical anti-China, and they say stupid things like they think Biden and the Chinese Communist Party are working together. They think the woke left and communism are the same thing, which they are not, and it's very frustrating to see. So
the woke left actually is laughing. A lot of people in China laughing of all those gender things, So
yeah.
to say that they're together, they really don't know anything about China, So
no, there's a woman in Texas who I think is running for Congress, or she's run for Congress in the past as a MAGA Republican, who's a Chinese American, and every tweet that she makes is about like, oh, I lived under communism, so I know what the woke people are like, and it's ridiculous. I mean, she says absolutely ridiculous things. And you watch it, and it's like, if you lived under communism, you would know that wokeism and communism couldn't be further apart from each other. Like, this is not, they're not the same thing at all. And it's just, she's pandering to Republicans and pandering. And there is a lot of resentment about the woke stuff in America. I mean, it's particularly ridiculous what a lot of people have had to go through. And, there's situations where one could, if you get up and if you say on Facebook or on Twitter, there's only two genders, you could lose your job. Well, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? That's absolutely ridiculous. But, there was a coworker of mine, it was a friend of mine in California. He lost his job. He got fired at his job because he was complaining about driving. And he was talking about driving in Los Angeles, and he said something about, we have a lot of people who got their driver's license in Nicaragua or whatever, and they don't drive well. And his coworkers overheard him. They reported him. He lost his job for commenting on, the driving of people from another country. Well, you shouldn't say anything racial. Obviously, that's not good. You shouldn't say anything that's offensive to different ethnic groups, but you shouldn't lose your job for a passing comment complaining about traffic. That's ridiculous. And that there is a lot of resentment around this, and we're getting poorer as a country. I mean, the living standards are dropping. There's, and that's one thing I've seen. I don't know if you've seen this, but over the weekend and over the past few days, there's been some videos that have gone viral. There was the mother from Georgia talking about how hard it is for her children to be able to pay their bills, and how they're working hard and they're not able to live on their own. And, there was that song that was really popular among Trump supporters about the rich men north of Richmond, getting rich as the country's getting poorer. And there's a lot of economic suffering, and the left, historically, they care about people suffering economically, but they don't. Now they're just concerned about the gender thing. They're concerned about calling people racist or whatever. And as a result, there's resentment against it growing, I must add. So there you go.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about that, I actually had something I wasn't sure I want to share with you, but you might find this interesting. Let me share that with you. So this is I would say typical view in China about this gender thing. Let's see what he's saying.
因为我呀是一个特土的人啊，我一直认为性别只有男和女。后来不是念了书了吗？就知道性别还有不一样的，也能接受。因为毕竟觉得自己认知浅，没见过什么世面。但是现在美国宣告说人的性别有100多种，关键是你查着很多彩虹族的网站还劝呢，说你真的认为自己是男的吗？夜深人静的时候，要不然你再好好想想。因为但凡能问出这种问题的，他肯定已经选好了。所以啊，为了别露怯，以后如果要问我112种人的性别，你到底是哪种啊？我就说我是99A 主战坦克型，与时俱进不是？还有人说啊，我是沃尔玛购物袋，你呢？操，来这个，那我就是物美手推车，爱咋咋地。我尊重这个世界上每一个独特的人，无关性别。 但是除了男女，你说这个世界上还有100多种性别，这就有点扯淡了。你就没想过以后修厕所怎么办啊？本来男女2间就能搞定的事儿，现在得100多间。那高级写字楼1到10层还不得全是厕所？等我找到99A 主战坦克能上的那间，我早尿裤子了。所以别跟我说什么彩虹革命代表先进的思想、人类的人权，先不先进我不知道，我只知道在北京，你要满脸大胡子敢上女厕所，准让人打死。
There you go. Yeah.
This is, I mean, I just picked him because he's pretty typical, you know, the way in the social media, how they discuss about this gender thing. I even have viewers ask me to make a program about this, you know, what's going on with all this gender thing. I don't know how to make a program because other than distraction, I don't know what else can I say about all these gender things, you know, so.
Well, I'm torn because I am sensitive to that. You know, there are transgender people that have worked with my organization and they suffer and they're, you know, it's been very hard for them. And I never want to promote anything that would seem like bullying or seem like these people are not welcome, et cetera. You know, I know that a lot of younger people are struggling with gender dysphoria and confusion and, and so I want to be respectful and all of that. But there is this demand now that all of society has to, accommodate this and make this the main focus. And I don't accept that. And yeah, I mean, it's a complicated line that I've had to walk politically because I don't agree that, these people should be bullied or these people should be stigmatized. But at the same time, I also don't agree that we should, change everything in society to accommodate this. And so it's a hard line to walk. And I've been widely accused of being transphobic and being all of this. And it's like, I'm not. I think people should be able to be who they are and live life as they want to live it. But I don't think we should be promoting this kind of thing. So there you go.
I have another short clip. She is a transgender in China. And this is an interview that NBC or CNBC was during the World Economic Forum that was interviewing her. So let's see what she says. It's not very long. Okay, so.
How big do you think the transgender community is in China? And do you think it's hiding in the shadows still? I mean, despite your lead and the fact that you've achieved what you've achieved through strength of personality, do you think there's still a community out there that is hiding, that is in some way confused and maybe feeling strange thoughts of shame and frustration? Because officially here in China, maybe identifying as transgender or LGBT is not widely accepted.
Yeah, combine this question I back to you. Look, the European society, take how many years the LGBT, the group, the homosexual marriage, everything approved by the society. That takes time. That's why when I come out as a first public transgender in this society, people all asking me different, group asking me represent them. I said, I don't have to represent each group. I just be myself. That's already big statement. And I think that in China, our country, our history is so long, so big. I think everything takes time. And that's why I always use the word, time will be explained everything. Let it be, let it existing. And from our ancient culture, LGBT, this group, already existing is nothing new for Chinese culture. So just before we don't talk about, that's why I do have a little bit of criticism about the Western culture influence China. Before the Chinese country opened to the Western world, so certain things we don't talk about it. But after the country communicates to the world, European, Western people love to labelize everything, gay, homosexual, lesbian, transgender, everything labelized, make people life much more sensitive, alert. 25 years ago, if you see in China, two boys holding on hands, walk on the street, people treat them very normal. They are maybe just a good friend. But now, if two boys holding on the hand on the street, oh my God, they are gay, the society become oversensitive. Who give that? You guys.
Well,
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, I mean, I remember, I was watching years ago. I was watching a movie from the 1960s about basketball, and I was watching it with my mother. It was on television. It was just an old basketball movie, and these two boys in the movie are just like hugging each other. And I remember I looked at my mother and I said, "Oh my God, is this like gay or something?" And she's like, "No." She said, "Back then, no one thought anything of that. Now, because there's stigma around it, but back then, I mean, people didn't know what homosexual was until they like went to college and took psychology or something like that. No one thought about anything like that, and so there wasn't like a big fear and a big stigma. Now, to be fair, unfortunately, that's not, people say that's not all good, right? Because child molestation happened and people didn't know what was going on. So, there was a lot more child molestation back then, because children didn't know what was going on. You know what I'm saying? So that's not all good. But at the same time, yeah, I know what that person is getting at. And like in our society, I mean, I've heard people talk about how, yeah, I mean, just, like a couple generations ago, and now there's a lot less affection between people of the same sexes. The other thing that I thought was interesting is, I'd be curious if that she is alluding to, but that there's a lot of trans scholarship, a lot of LGBT scholarship that kind of goes into like, they talk about the Native Americans in the United States, and they argue that they had different genders and all of that, and that's very controversial. There are some Native Americans who feel that, oh, that's really great, and it shows that we were a much more tolerant people. But my understanding is also, I used to work with Leslie Feinberg, who was an openly, transgender activist who was a communist in the United States. And she went to go speak at some college, I believe it was in like Colorado or something. And the Native Americans there hated her because of her writing on this issue. And they said something like, this is a person who's made a career calling our people a bunch of fags and queers, and that there was never any of that before the white man brought it here. This is perversion, and that, that there are some, and there's an attempt by some scholars of sexual, history and such to argue that there was widespread homosexuality in Africa before the white people came, or there was, these things, and that some third world people say that's absolutely false. And that's just pure projection. So I don't know enough about it, honestly. I do know that the only evidence that I have seen like really compounded is that when the U.S. or I'm sorry, when the Europeans were colonizing the Americas, and when they were colonizing various places, they did accuse the people of not having good sexual morality. And that was a really common thing that the colonizers would say in Africa, in the Americas and other things, is that a lot of their writings, they would accuse the indigenous people of being sexually promiscuous or not having the puritanical standards that the West had at that time. So I don't know. Other than that, that's all I know.
That's the first time I heard that there's a discussion about that for the natives. All I can say is in China, the homosexual thing has been existed a long time. It's in the literature, in the history book. There are emperors who has lovers,
Okay.
Homosexual lovers. I mean, that's just existed a long time in, like I said, in literatures, in books, and etc. So people never think of this as something unique. It's like, okay, if you have that. If you are homosexual, if you're gay, whatever, that's your business, right? I don't care. And then you're walking on the street. When I was growing up, we holding hands with my girlfriends, we walk on the street, and nobody cared. Okay, yeah. That's just the way it is. And she's right. Her name is Jinxing. She's very well known in China. She's a dancer, but she's also having her own talk show, etc. And this is if you watch the whole interview, it's kind of interesting, the whole interview. The person really want to lead to some criticism of China. He really wanted Jinxing to criticize China on this aspect, but he didn't get there. Because she didn't think that that's the issue. She actually think you hurt her. She actually thinks you guys, you Western, make it too sensitive of issue. So right. I would think for transgender people, for homosexual, I would think it's probably better just treat everybody equally, not make it such a big deal. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I can just listen to what she says. She herself is a transgender, right? So when you make it so divided, now, do you think that's the reason they do it intentionally to distract people? Do you think that's what they're trying to do?
I mean, there's many layers to it. But I think when it gets down to it, it's something that does not change U.S. society in any way, right? And there's a lot of money to be made. I mean, New York City has been, pro LGBT for a long time because this city was, it was a place that gay people went. It was like, gay people, they didn't, they were a minority, and it was a place they could find other gay people, and the same for San Francisco. And it turned into a way to make money. In Cleveland, the city's economy was crashing. And one thing that happened, I remember when I was in Cleveland, it was on the local news, was that they opened a bathhouse, right? Because because it was a way to bring tourism. And I think up to this day, the largest gay bathhouse is in Cleveland, Ohio, because most cities in the United States have kind of cracked down on that kind of thing because it's very dangerous to public health. HIV can be spread and such, but but in Cleveland they needed tourism to come into the city. They needed more business, and so they opened that up. And then I think that it's a way to make money. And it's a political cause that doesn't challenge the structure of U.S. society in any way. It seems radical. It seems like, oh, we're standing up against tradition and authoritarianism, but nothing really changes. And that to some degree or other, and this is something that people on the left don't want to admit, right? And this is where we get into, when we talk about China and the way China is, and the way China is communist, but it's not communist in the way the Westerners think about it, is that these traditional values, religious groups and all of that, as much as they are conservative, they are to some degree or other a threat to the power structure. They can say no. You know what I mean? They can challenge things, and they can get in the way of what the liberal order wants. And, on the left, you're not supposed to admit that. You're supposed to say, oh, they're, the capitalists, they reinforce all of this. And that's not exactly true. There's a campaign in Hollywood now. They're clearly trying to destroy the Church of Scientology. Is that because the Church of Scientology is revolutionary or good or something? No, but it's because they have the ability to prevent movies from being made. They had enough influence in Hollywood that they could push an agenda, and what they believe in is contrary to what big pharma is pushing. They don't believe in medications. They don't believe in modern psychology. And so, the Church of Scientology is being targeted. I mean, there's been a huge, effort against them to roll back their influence and to demonize them. And that's not to say that they're necessarily a good organization. I mean, it sounds like they have a lot of problems, but it is this kind of push and pull with the liberal order, wanting absolute control and hegemony, and various institutions, beliefs, and customs, traditions of society getting in the way of that. And I think that's kind of how you can interpret this. Do you think I'm onto something?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably much more complex than I know, because that's why I feel like I can't really make a program, because I don't understand the whole thing. Why the elite, like the Biden administration, pushing so hard on these things, which most people cannot really connect to, so why are they doing that? Maybe there's deeper reason for that.